So welcome this evening, folks, to the Board of Adjustment, the City of Moscow. Our board chair is not here, so we have to make a motion to have a temporary chair for this particular meeting. So is there a nomination that would like to be made from the board members?
I nominate Tim Thompson to be the temporary chairman for this evening.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded for myself. I accept that responsibility if it's chosen. So I guess we'll vote with Tim.
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Jerry? Aye. And I will say aye too. So, okay, we will proceed then. Want to approve the February 15th minutes as our first action item. Approve the minutes as presented, approve minutes with amendments, or provide staff further direction.
Move to approve as presented.
Seconded.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes as so presented. I think we have to go by name again. So Tim?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Jerry?
Aye.
And I say aye. So the minutes have been approved and as presented without amendments. At this time, I'd like to open the meeting to a public comment. Time limit of 15 minutes total. Members of the public may speak to the board requesting matters not on the agenda for currently pending before the Board of Adjustment. Please state your name and resident city for the record and limit your remarks to 3 minutes. Are there any comments from the public for items other than those that are on the agenda? See no interest, I'll close the public comment for items not on the agenda. Public hearing number 3, agenda item number 3, public hearing, proposed amendment to an existing conditional use permit for K-12 private school and small child care facility to increase to the size of the child care facility to a large child care facility, 21 or more children located at 1410 South Blaine Street. And staff will now present the application.
Thank you very much. And I'm sure that was a mouthful to read, so I appreciate that. Title was very long. Yeah, before you tonight, we have a conditional use permit amendment. Back up. For 1410 South Blaine Street. As the chairperson stated, this proposal is to request an amendment to an existing conditional use permit that was approved in 2020. This conditional use permit was to operate a K-12 school and a small child care facility, which is defined as 13 to 20 children. The proposed amendment would increase the size of the child care facility to a large daycare facility, 21 children or more, and this is located in the East Side Marketplace at 1410 South Blaine. It is also increasing the square footage by 1,560 square feet. The child care facility would operate between 8:30 and 3 p.m. Monday through Friday, and the characteristics of the school will remain the same as the original conditional use permit. So to provide a little bit of background, some of you were on the Board of Adjustment at the time of that original hearing, some of you weren't. So this will go into a little bit of background about how that came about and where we are today. On July 2nd, 2020, the applicant applied for a license to operate a daycare facility on the subject property. On July 21st, they applied for a conditional use permit for the K-12 private school and the small child care facility. At that time, the child care facility would start with only 10 students and possibly August 26th of 2020, the board used by the Happy Horizons child care facility so long as of the Moscow daycare ordinance are satisfied. The applicant has received a waiver from City Council for the outdoor play area, not being directly adjacent to the child care facility, in order to utilize the Happy Horizons outdoor play area, or the applicant receives permission from Happy Horizons to utilize their outdoor play area. So that was a condition placed upon that conditional use permit. Moscow City Code Title IX Section 1019A2 states in part that daycare facilities shall provide open space for outdoor play A minimum of 100 square feet per child is required. This area shall be adjacent to the childcare facility and shall provide a safe area that can be easily maintained and is accessible for use by children. On December 5th of 2022, the applicant applied for a license to operate a large daycare facility, and that would be an increase in the number of children at the facility. On December 30th of 2022, the Moscow City Clerk received a notice of appeal letter from the applicant requesting a waiver for the outdoor play area required by the large daycare facility for the Jubilee School. On January 17th of this year, City Council voted to grant the appeal and waive the requirement for the proposed outdoor play area and directed staff to issue the daycare license. This is the subject property where the current school and daycare is located. You're all familiar with Eastside Marketplace. That is a 2.1 acre site and it is mixed use. There are 5 structures on the parcel, including Eastside Marketplace, US Bank, Taco Bell, KFC, and the former Wingers building. The proposed site is located within Eastside Marketplace. The subject property is located north of Troy Highway, south of White Avenue, and east of Blaine Street. And it has primary access from all 3 street sides. The location within the Eastside Marketplace that contains the Jubilee School is the area shown in pink. That's the existing as well as the expand 1,560 square feet. Current zoning is motor business, and the intent of the motor business zone is to provide for a location and grouping of compatible uses having similar operation as they involve enterprises which depend primarily on transient motor vehicle-based trade. By concentrating such uses, the city intends to increase public convenience when utilizing such services and within the regulation to allow such activities to render the maximum service. Properties to the north, east, and west of the subject property are also located in the motor business district. And the Latah County Fairgrounds is located to the north across White Avenue and is within the medium density R3 zoning district. South of the subject property is located within the research, technology, and office zoning designation, as well as motor business. This shows the zoning. Obviously, as we talked about, the brown section is motor business. Directly to the south is residential, technology, and office. And the R3 Fairgrounds is to the north. This is the front of the subject property, which you're all familiar with. And this is the proposed site plan showing the existing Jubilee School here, the expansion of the Montessori here, parking adjacent in the front, and the drop-off location in the rear. This is the original layout from the original conditional use permit showing the classrooms of the school. This is the proposed expansion. This area here is the additional space included for the Montessori school. This here would be the existing Jubilee School, and obviously Safeway would be adjacent to the north. And this is what the proposed layout would be of the interior showing both spaces. Jubilee School here with the Montessori school addition here. Educational service standards, parking and loading requirements are as follows. Kindergarten, elementary, middle schools require 2 spaces per classroom. High schools require 5 spaces per classroom. Loading spaces requirements are 2 loading spaces provided in one of the following ways. Either an off-street when the space is reserved or otherwise generally available and to which is located on the same side of the street as the school, or off-street when egress and ingress would not require backing movements by vehicles, or other loading space determined to be safe by the city engineer, considering existing streets and traffic conditions and anticipation of the loading facility. Large daycare facility standards, parking and loading requirements are 4 off-street parking spaces required for the large facility. Loading spaces are the same, 2 loading spaces in the same fashion as educational facilities. So in terms of this particular facility, parking and loading requirements, there are 28 parking spaces needed. The current site contains 799 parking spaces for the entire Eastside Marketplace. Current uses are using 567 existing spaces, which leaves an excess of 232 spaces of what's required for the current uses of the building. So this is an increase of 1 parking space from the previous conditional use permit. The applicant proposes to use the 4 loading spaces directly behind the building and plans to utilize the rear entrance. This is no change from what was previously required and approved. The play area, Moscow City Code Title IX, Section 1019A2. As stated before, I'm not going to read through that again. This discusses the requirement to have 100 square feet of play area per child. And as stated on January 17, 2023, City Council voted to grant the appeal to waive the requirement for that outdoor play area and directed staff to issue that daycare license. So it is for those reasons tonight that staff would recommend approval of the conditional use permit to amend the application to operate the K-12 private school and increase the size to a large childcare facility located at 410 South Blaine with no conditions, and direct staff to prepare the relevant criteria and standards. And I would be happy to take any questions that you might have.
Okay, does members of the board have any questions for the staff?
I do.
Okay, Jerry.
In your presentation,
Yes,
you are using interchangeably school and daycare.
correct.
Do they not have 2 different designations?
They do. The original conditional use permit was for the educational facility and a small daycare. So this amendment has no change to the educational facility. It only changes the size of the childcare facility from a small to a large. So the conditional use permit was already approved with both. This is just increasing the size of the childcare facility.
Second thing is the 567 parking spaces required for the east side.
Correct.
Is that including the parking spaces required for the vacant winger's position?
No. So when a building is vacant, there's no use. When the use changes, the applicant files that permit with the city, and at that point, we determine whether or not the parking is adequate. So when a building is vacant and there is no use, it's considered vacant parking. So all of those buildings and facilities that are empty currently don't take up any parking.
So the parts of the east side marketplace itself that are empty
Mhm.
do not currently require that parking.
Correct.
The wingers does not currently require that parking.
Correct.
If those were filled, how much parking is there?
It would depend on the use.
If wingers was to reopen as wingers,
So the ratio, I believe, for a restaurant is 1 parking space per 200 square feet. So it would be this, if there was a remodel done, say for the restaurant, we would look at the overall square footage and then take the 200 per square foot calculation and ensure that there was adequate parking for that wingers to operate in that capacity. Oftentimes square footage will limit and parking will limit development. So each one's looked at as applications are applied for. And so depending on that use, because that number of parking spaces required changes with whatever's being proposed in that location.
okay.
Good questions, good questions. The only question I might have is, has the city heard any complaints at all from the other businesses that exist, knowing that there's a childcare in the mall?
No.
Okay.
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, if there's no other questions, we'll close out the questions of the staff and we'll invite the applicant to come up and give he or she a presentation if they so desire to further enlighten us on the application. And please state your name and your address, please.
Malia Mason, 313 South Cleveland Street. So I think Amy did a great presentation. I don't think I have a lot of details to add. It's just basically we moved the Montessori program to this new square footage and it's increased the size. So we want to have a bigger program, but it hasn't changed at all the loading or unloading or parking plan that we had in place before. It's just basically increased the layout of our program.
So the function of the program hasn't changed. It's just,
No.
this is just an expansion in square footage.
Exactly, yeah.
Questions from the board from the applicant?
I have a question.
Yes, Tim?
When Karma obtained their liquor license, were you required to provide a letter of support for that?
I am not aware of that. I'm the Montessori teacher, so I'm not on the Montessori board or on the Jubilee School Board. So I'm not sure of that.
The state of Idaho requires 300 feet between a front door of a liquor establishment and a school or a church. And I'm concerned that we continue to see the expansion of churches and schools in areas that are typically.
Something went wrong. Please try.
Clearly, something's going wrong. But I'm concerned that the expansion of schools and churches in the CBD is a great example of that, where in the absence of a school or church's permission, an applicant could be denied a liquor license and an opportunity to serve the public when that's what that area is designed for. And I see the motor business area being designed for the same, for the purpose of dining and for libations. And I don't know how to resolve this, but this is a concern to me because I think it's a big problem for Moscow that is an unintended consequence of actions that have already taken place.
All right. Well, all I can say is I don't know. I didn't hear of anything from Jubilee discouraging them getting their license. I also don't know what the distance is between Jubilee and Karma,
Sure.
if it's more than what you stated. In terms of the Montessori, our access is from the back, so it's very far away from, it would definitely be beyond that distance from the
300
Karma entrance.
Did you say they did get their license then? So wouldn't whoever issued that license have to conflict resolve the 300-foot issue?
Yeah, I guess, but I'm concerned about ongoing spread of churches and schools in areas that are commercial areas
Yeah.
and circumventing of other opportunities for other potential business owners.
And just clarification, I believe the liquor license is actually still owned by the
East side.
Eastside Marketplace. So
Right.
as the landlord and the owner of it, then it becomes onerous upon them to also make sure that that 300 feet or whatever it is maintained. But then it quite possibly could turn into a time where they say, well, we can't have that anymore. And now you don't have the liquor license.
We're talking about hypothetical future consequences, not particularly.
Well, while it is hypothetical, the reality of it is down on Main Street.
One thing I can say is I'm pretty certain we don't have any plans to expand further. So I don't see us taking up any more of the empty space that's there, if that's helpful.
And when you say you're not going to expand anymore, that's the Montessori or is that the Jubilee School?
Both. Yeah, the model, we want to stay a smaller community. So bigger.
So I have a question. You have right now less than 20 students on your permit. How many more additional staff are you going to be hiring in order to cover the additional students?
So depending on what the enrollment is, we want to be able to take up to 30 students. If we were to take that many, we would be following what the licensing regulations are. So I believe it's a 1-to-10 ratio. So if we had any number of students over 20, we would have 3 adults in the classroom. Does that answer your question? Is that what you were getting at?
Yes, I just wondering how many more
Okay.
people would be employed at the school.
Yeah, I don't know that it would change that number really very much because the Montessori was operating inside in smaller square footage prior to that, but I guess we did add a couple staff, maybe 2 or 3.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
One more.
Yes, you bet, Jerry.
So you just said that you're not going to go over 30. So if we were to actually, part of the approval of this would be that we limit you to 30 students, would that give you heartburn?
Not at all.
Okay.
We are actually not really a daycare, but because we have students that are younger than school age, we have to have the daycare license. So it isn't a daycare facility in actuality. It's a Montessori primary school. So And we want to be practicing authentic Montessori. So we wouldn't go over 30 students because that's the model that we're working with.
Any more questions for the applicant or clarifications?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we'd like to open it up for public comment. Anybody would like to comment in support of the applicant? Now's your opportunity. Please state your name and address, please.
So I'm Marissa Marr. I live at 2109 Itani Drive here in Moscow, and I have 2 children currently enrolled in the elementary program at Jubilee, and I have a 2-year-old who I hope to enroll in the future in the Montessori program. And I've been a part of the conversations with City Hall about the demand for childcare. So currently, I'm ready to go back into the workforce, but have a need for childcare. And finding childcare in Moscow is really difficult. So especially for the younger children. So this increases the capacity for the school that I want to enroll my child in and increases their chance of being able to get in and be with their older siblings. So it satisfies a significant demand for the community here in Moscow. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to speak in behalf of the applicant in support? Okay, is there somebody who would like to speak in opposition to the applicant's project? Okay, then we will close the public comment and the board here will deliberate or discuss what we've learned and what our concerns or issues are. Anybody have anything to say? I think Tim brings up a good point. I'm not so sure that it's within our scope to try to resolve that particular kind of a problem, but I certainly understand it. So I don't know.
I want to agree with what Tim said as well. And having been on the Planning and Zoning Commission when it happened downtown, I find I'm uncomfortable with the interchangeability of a daycare versus a school. Where I understand that there's a need for daycare. I understand that daycare costs as much as sending a kid to college at this point. But a school is not necessarily a daycare. If that is, then public school is a public daycare. And so the interchangeability of those 2 words, I think, is a very slippery slope. If it's a daycare, it's a daycare. If it's a school, it's a school. Motor business comes at a high premium in this community. We turned down 20 acres of motor business. And we haven't made any new motor business in probably 5 years at this point. And so again, even though it's a conditional use, I have a problem turning what should be business over to a school and then potentially making it so that an asset of that motor business use is unable to or could be unable to use that asset. A liquor license, anybody in Idaho knows that they're a $200,000 commodity. And until the legislature decides to fix that, it gives me a lot of heartburn.
It's not just liquor license, it's beer and wine as well.
Well, which then, they're backed up right next to Safeway. So even though
Well,
Safeway isn't,
retail.
they're doing retail, but I mean, yeah, again, it makes it really rough. And I understand that it's an existing conditioned use, and I'm just not sure I can get behind increasing that existing use.
Is it conceivable that as a condition of the amended CUP that they can be required to sign a letter of support for any applicant who wants a beer or wine license or liquor license in an adjacent space?
I think we can probably put any
Amy?
condition in if we want.
I don't know that mixing those 2 issues as a term of approval is necessarily appropriate. In looking at the allowable conditions stated in the procedures section of city code. Um, Let's see, let me read them to you here. Oh, let's see. Actually, probably going to be easier if I just look in the section of the staff report that lists allowable conditions. Okay, so the Board of Adjustment may impose conditions, including but not limited to those that minimize adverse impacts on other development, control the sequence and timing of development, control the duration of development, assure the development is maintained properly, designate the exact location and nature of the development, require the provisions of on or off-site public facility and services, require more intensive or restrictive standards than those generally required by the ordinance, and require mitigation of effects of the proposed development upon service deliverability by a political subdivision, including school districts providing services within the planning jurisdiction. In terms of liquor license and distance from a property, I want to look up state code and figure out, because I do know that there is a distance for schools, but this is an expansion of the daycare portion. So I don't know if a daycare actually is part of that state code.
Amy, we were just told that it's not really a daycare, it's a Montessori school.
Right, but per zoning code, it fits the definition of a daycare, which is why it requires this conditional use permit expansion. The daycare requirements, the definition of a daycare, regardless of the method that they use, it fits zoning code definition of a daycare. So for zoning code definition purposes and your purposes tonight, it is a daycare. The school that is operating already and has been approved is not in question.
Well, if that's the case, if it's just a daycare, then my concern is mitigated. But if it's not, then I still have a concern.
Sure. For zoning purposes and for the purposes of this meeting, it is a daycare.
And why is that, Tim? Why is it mitigated?
Because daycare is not one of the items that the state requires that distance
Okay,
between a beer and wine license or a liquor
Okay.
license. It's a church and a school.
and we feel firm about this. This is a daycare.
It is a daycare, yes.
Okay, I don't particularly have any comments about it.
Well, I was on the board when we approved the Jubilee School originally, and the biggest issue that we had was having to do something with the outside recreation. And they solved that problem, and they've got a waiver on this one, and they also have some other recreation lined up on the backside where they're going to have the pickup in that. And so it's, to me, it's not anything out of the ordinary to increase it, but I kind of agree with Jerry that maybe limit the number to put a maximum a number on the schools, children of 30 or something of that nature. But it's just an extension of what we've already done in the past.
Let me challenge you for that on a minute. Just because we've done it in the past, let's use downtown as an example. If they came and asked for an expansion, because we've done it in the past, by that logic, we would be walking into doing it again, potentially.
Mhm.
So just because we've done it in the past does not mean that it was done right. I mean, I'm not going to say right, but that it was the best land use decision, because that's what we're making a decision on here is land use. And it doesn't necessarily mean that because we did it in the past, we have to continue down that path that we've started. So
True.
that's kind of where I'm having my biggest conflict is I wouldn't have been in support of this to begin with, based on where we are, now I've got to make that decision. How far am I willing to bend? Because if we bend here, and I'm not going to say that they're going to come back in another, if you look at their timeline, they've been here now 3 years. I'm not going to say they're going to come back in another 3 years and want to expand into the next space to them. But we've
Yeah.
already made that decision once. Well, I guess we're going to make the decision again. So
The,
I
I'm having a,
don't think there's, just because it's been decided once, it's an automatic thing. I think
But-
everyone
but
is a case by
that's
case.
kind of what Tim just said.
Steve?
Or
Yeah,
Steve, I mean,
Yeah, it means we went through a due diligence process in the past, and at the time, what we heard was supportable. Now there's another request, and in a way, you start afresh. It is true, this project has come to us in the past. But when is the point where all of a sudden you don't get the benefit of the previous precedent, you know? And I think that's not what we're talking about here.
well, we're talking about, Jerry, you're talking about motor business building or square footage, and yet where this particular addition is here is on the back side of the building where it really wouldn't have.
but it
would have a-
also affects the frontage of the building. And it has 28 spaces in the front of the building.
Mhm.
I mean, yes, the pickup and the drop off is in the back.
Well, so is a school. I mean, a school, there's still school is in the back where it wouldn't be a normal, good access for a business to be back in that corner back there along the back side of the
No, it was
building.
a delivery entrance in the
Mhm.
past. It was, if I remember right, it was Sears's back warehouse. You know, and then they had the store at the front end.
Right.
So you've taken the entire thing and, you know, I'm not arguing that it's not a reasonable use.
Mhm.
I'm just trying to get around the fact that we're not making any more motor business. It's not expanding. It's expanding a little bit in the back for the expansion of the school. And then they're asking for more than 21 students. Now, if I will agree to a 30 student maximum, I think that's a good mitigation.
Mhm.
It's a school and Tim and I are still, I don't, Tim says the daycare, but
I don't say the daycare. Amy says the daycare. As long as Amy says the daycare, I'm good.
Zoning code says daycare.
it depends on what the city attorney is willing to argue.
This has come before council as a daycare, and they were granted a waiver for the outdoor play area as a daycare. So from the city attorney's perspective, she sat through that meeting, and I think the determination has been made, this is a daycare.
Didn't you also brief the city council approved the license?
Yes.
For a,
Daycare,
For a daycare.
yes.
if I remember, some of these storefronts have been vacant. I don't disagree with the fact that there are only so much motor business, but there's been some vacancy for quite some time there also, right?
Well, COVID took a toll.
Well, it was even before that. I mean, if once Sears moved out and. Okay,
And I would just want to state for the record that I recognize that the services you guys provide are super important to Moscow, and parents need daycare. So I am definitely not anti-daycare, anti-school, and the education that's provided is invaluable for our young children. I just think we need to balance that with land use.
so can I entertain a motion?
I make a motion that we approve it with the condition that they limit the number of students to 30 students. Increase the number of students in daycare to up to 30.
Is there a second? Second that. And is that an acceptable condition?
Yes.
Oh, it is. Okay. So it's been moved and seconded to approve the application with the condition that the daycare center be limited to 30 students. Ready to vote? We'll go down left to right again. Tim?
With the clarification that it's a daycare, I vote aye.
Steve?
Aye.
No.
Aye. Okay, the motion passes with 3-4 and 1 against. And we need a motion, and I move that the staff prepare a document, a reasoned statement and relevant criteria and standards for the board to approve. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Okay, Tim?
Aye.
Okay, Steve?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, agenda item number 4, public hearing conditional use permit application for an accessory structure in excess of 1,000 square feet located at 1006 Windmill Lane within farm, ranch, and outdoor recreation zone in the area of the city impact per Moscow City Code 4-3-4. Ready for the staff to present the application?
Thank you, Chair. Okay, before you now, we have a conditional use permit for 1006 Windmill Lane in the area of city impact. The applicant, Mark Stewart, has applied for a conditional use permit for an accessory structure exceeding 1,000 square feet. Again, the location is 1006 Windmill Lane in the area of city impact. The proposed accessory structure would be 1,500 square feet, located on the east side of the future house. As the chair stated, it is located in the Farm Ranch Outdoor Recreational Zoning District in the area of city impact, where accessory structures above 1,000 square feet require conditional use permits per Moscow City Code. The area city impact, per the City of Moscow's Area City Impact Agreement with Latah County, Moscow's Board of Adjustment is to conduct one hearing and forward your recommendation onto Latah County. So as site and area land use for the subject property, it is 3.82 acres. There will be a 3,508 square foot single family home. It's currently under construction. This is located on the east side of Mix Road, just north of Hardin, within the Moscow area of impact. The adjacent property to the south also has a residential home currently under construction. The property to the east is an old railway corridor remnant owned by Burlington Northern. And the parcel directly to the west of the subject property is 65,000 acres of undeveloped agricultural land. So just to give you a visual, the subject property is there outlined in turquoise. As you can see, there is a large parcel directly adjacent to the west that is undeveloped land. The subject property to the south, or the property to the south, is the additional single family home being constructed, and the property to the north vacant, and the old railway remnant to the east as stated. Current zoning of the subject property and adjacent properties to the northeast and south are currently all zoned farm ranch or outdoor recreation, and they're all within the area of impact. Within the area of impact, Latah County has adopted Moscow's Farm Ranch Zoning Code. According to City of Moscow Zoning Code, the purpose of the Farm Ranch Zoning District is intended to permit current agricultural, outdoor recreation, and other open land uses to be maintained at the same time to set minimum standards for the development of similar new uses in order that this open zoning district is protected against spasmodic, disorderly, and indiscriminate development until such time as other appropriate uses of the land in the zoning district has been determined. It is also intended that newly annexed areas of the city be placed in this classification until land use studies determined the characteristics and appropriate use of such areas. The accessory structure in excess of 1,000 square feet up to 1,500 square feet requires a conditional use permit in the farm ranch zone per Moscow City Code 43-4. Again, this is an image showing the zoning. North and south both are farm ranch, and the surrounding areas ag forest. According to the comprehensive plan for 2019, future land use map designates the subject property and surrounding property as rural and agricultural. This is intended to allow continued use for agricultural purposes with allowances for limited residential development at very low densities, Lands with this designation should be preserved for agricultural use, and development should be directed to the areas in closer proximity to the city where municipal utilities are available and land can be efficiently developed and served. Areas shown on the agriculture as agriculture on the future land use plan are outside of the 10-year growth area and beyond the area of which the city is prepared to provide adequate facilities and services during the horizon of this plan. Generally, these are found on the periphery of the city and throughout the area of city impact. The residential development options allow septic and well and septic public water where applicable and warranted, and very low densities consistent with the intended agricultural character. Appropriate current zones for lands with this designation are ag forest, farm ranch, and outdoor rec. The 2019 City of Moscow Comprehensive Plan Community Mobility section identifies Mix Road as a collector. In terms of streets and access, the subject property is east of Mix Road and north of Hardin Road. Mix Road is developed at a 24-foot wide paved roadway with 2 travel lanes and minimal gravel shoulders on both sides. The site will be accessed by construction of future Windmill Lane. There are no existing sidewalk, curbs, and gutters. This is just an image of Mix Road as it currently stands today. I'm sure some of you have driven out in that area and are very familiar. This is a photo of the subject property. As you can see, current single-family home is under construction. This is the proposed site plan showing the future single-family home here and the proposed accessory structure to the east of the subject property. Elevation of the subject property would be 21 feet, which fits within our zoning requirements. Within the farm ranch zoning designation, setbacks and height limitations for accessory structures are as follows: 25 feet for the front, 5 feet for the rear and sides, and 35 feet in height. The proposed accessory structure meets all of these requirements. So staff's recommendation tonight would be to put forth a recommendation of approval to Latah County for the proposed accessory structure at 1006 Windmill Lane to Latah County Zoning Commission with no conditions. And then request staff to prepare relevant criteria and standards at an upcoming meeting. And I would be happy to take any questions you have.
Members of the board, questions for the staff? Pretty cut dry. Thank you, Amy. Okay, would the applicant like to address the board? And if so, please state your name and address.
Mark Stewart, 2315 Weymouth Street.
Get that back there? I think so,
All right, should I repeat it again or?
just in case.
Okay, Mark Stewart, 2315 Weymouth Street.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I won't take up any more of your time. I am happy to answer any questions about our project out there. I think we are kind of on the outside edge of the zone of impact. There's a lot of farm area all around, and the structure doesn't seem out of place, I guess, to me out there on a larger lot.
Any questions from the board to the applicant? Thank you very much. Is there, we will open up the public hearing now for anyone who would like to speak in support of this project.
My name is Matt Winkler, 1703 East F Street here in Moscow, and I'm the owner of the reference property just to the south of this proposed building. Also building my own residential home there, and I just wanted to say that I believe the proposed building is consistent with the character of the neighborhood and the character of Farm Ranch, and I would encourage you to approve this conditional use permit.
Thank you.
Chair, if I could also interject just to let you know, before you, there is, yep.
Is there anyone else like to speak in support? I want to make a note for the record that the city did receive a letter from Luke Grucki, member of the GLO group, who wrote a letter in support of this project. Is there anybody who would like to speak in opposition to this project at this time?
My name is Robert Clements. I live across the street from the,
Just say again, please, sir.
my name is Robert Clements,
Cummins, okay.
1013 Sweet Lane. I live right across the street from the project. I'm not totally against the project. My issue being here is what is the point of the area of impact if you allow people to build in the area of impact? You see what I'm saying? If you're giving me a piece of property and telling me I can't build there, and then you tell me I can, I don't understand that point.
Well, I think if it's a conditional use, that's why we have the hearing, to see if
Yeah.
it meets the conditional use.
But why is it, what is the point of the area of impact? That's what I'd like to know.
Amy, you have an answer to
Yeah,
that?
yeah. The intent of the area impact is to look at areas within the periphery of the city that will at some point be annexed within the city to make sure that those that fit the certain zoning requirements that have adopted the City of Moscow zoning code comply with what the code is so that when they are annexed, those properties are not in a situation where they're not in compliance with city code. And so in most cases, the Latah County Commissioners have adopted City of Moscow zoning code, with the exception of the Ag Forest zoning district. And in the Ag Forest zoning district, the city has adopted the county zoning code. So anything that's within the area of impact that may be on the 10-year horizon of being annexed within the city, that the area of impact agreement with the county ensures that we make a recommendation and forward it on to the county, and they have the final determination whether or not that proposed building is erected. So they're just making a recommendation tonight to the county.
Yeah.
The county will have the final decision.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to the project because I'm building a shop myself. I just hope that whoever's building this, I moved out in the country to kind of be in the dark, I might say, just be peaceful and quiet. I'm just hoping that he doesn't put a bunch of, huge floodlights and stuff out there. That's the only thing I'm concerned with. But I understand what he's trying to do. I don't have a problem with that.
And zoning code addresses lighting in residential areas as well. So there are certain zoning requirements that allow for certain lights in zoning designations to be fully cut off below a certain lumen. So if there are concerns at some point, you can always look at the city code and see what's allowed.
Okay, that's all I'm here. I'm not trying to stop him from doing what he needs to do. I wasn't sure what the area of impact was. My property doesn't have an area of impact, but the 3 properties below me do. And I'm like, well, you're paying for land you can't use and you're paying tax on it. That was my point.
Sure.
But then people got to come down here and try and get a permit to use that piece of ground. Just confusing.
Sure, yeah, and
Very confusing.
it's the area that's designated that looks like it's on the 10-year horizon to be incorporated as part of the city. So, right. So that's the intent of the area of impact, so that we can kind of guide so it doesn't become disorderly and disconnected from what is intended. It all comes back to the comprehensive plan and the vision for development of the City of Moscow. And additionally, the county has their own comprehensive plan as well, and where they're guiding and directing their development.
So like that piece of property showed 3 acres. How much of that is area of impact?
All of it.
Oh, okay. How? Because if you have 3 acres, like my neighbors have 3 acres and they have an area of impact, I don't know the size of that area, but they can't build in that.
There's a boundary drawn around the City of Moscow. I'll give you my card and I'll be happy to we can sit down and kind of go over where the area of impact is, so that you can kind of look at what's affected by that area of impact agreement and what isn't.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Great questions.
Question, and you deserve an answer. Maybe the realtor who sold them that should have explained it. Okay, where were we? Oh, is there anyone else who would like to speak in opposition to this project? Okay, with that, I will close the public hearing and the board will deliberate, I think is the right word. Any questions or discussions? Straightforward, poll bill. Okay, So anybody like to raise a motion?
I would be willing to make a motion to recommend to the Latah County Planning Commission
Correct.
to approve the project without condition, and you don't have to do relevant.
I do.
You do? So then I would also in my motion like to include that we direct staff to create the relevant criteria and
Standards.
thank you, standards.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and second to agree to the applicant's use of the property without condition to construct an accessory structure and direct the staff to prepare reason statement and relevant criteria and standards. Time for a vote. Tim?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Gary?
Aye.
Aye. It's been moved and passed for the applicant. Okay, action item number 5. Public hearing. A conditional use application for a public service and utility facility at 2780 West A Street within the multiple family residential R4 zone district per Moscow Code 4-3-4. The staff will now present the applicant project.
Thank you. As Chair stated, yes, we have an application for a conditional use permit at 2780 West A Street. The City of Moscow Information Systems Department is requesting a conditional use permit for a public service and utility facility within the R4 zoning district. This would consist of an 85-foot monopole antenna tower for emergency response radio communications. Noise generated from the monopole is not anticipated to be audible from neighboring properties. A special use permit was approved by the Board of Adjustment for the City of Moscow on August 20th, 2015 to construct a high-capacity municipal well and construct a new well house facility on the subject property. Construction of well 10 and the associated well house is complete. So this is the subject property at the terminus of A Street, here highlighted in turquoise, just off of War Bonnet. As I stated, there's an existing well house that a special use permit was approved in 2015. This is the same location that the proposed monopole is being proposed. So the subject property is 3/4 of an acre. The lot has 232 feet of frontage along A Street. The surrounding properties include a church on the adjacent R4 zoned parcel with retail and hotels located south of West A Street. All of the retail buildings face south with the rear of the building facing A Street. The adjacent parcel across the state line is currently vacant and undeveloped agricultural land. As far as zoning goes, multiple family residential R4. R4 zone is permits public services and utility facilities subject to approval of a conditional use permit, which is why we're here tonight. Public services and utility facilities include uses such as fire stations, telephone switching facilities, fairgrounds, cemeteries, pumping stations, other similar public service facilities necessary to the neighborhood and community. The proposed monopole antenna is included in this category of public services. Maximum building height in an R4 zone is 40 feet. However, non-residential uses are permitted to exceed the limitation through a conditional use permit process. Again, the subject property here in red, as you can see to the east, south are both motor business, and to the north is continuation of R4, and to the west, obviously, the state line. So streets and access is A Street, it's access via A Street is 40-foot wide paved street with curb, gutter, tree lawn, and sidewalks on both sides. A Street terminates at the state line. The existing approach is on A Street, and here is a photo of the subject property from A Street. As you can see, there is a gate entering, and this is from the church parking lot in the rear, so this would be a photo facing west. This is a conceptual site plan showing the existing well house here. The proposed monopole located just to the north on the same parcel, right here in that circle. Here's a proposed elevation showing the 85-foot monopole. So based upon the relevant criteria and standards, staff's recommendation tonight would be for approval of the conditional use permit for public service and utility facility located at 2780 West A Street with no conditions, and to direct staff to prepare relevant criteria and standards to be reviewed at an upcoming meeting. And I would be more than happy to take any questions you have.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
The monopole created behind the Nazarene Church, similar?
No.
Why?
Because that fits the definition of a telecommunication tower, which is a commercial telecommunications facility. This is categorized as a public service utility and therefore has different standards.
Okay. However, they're the same.
No. That pole is erected for telecommunication companies to provide space for commercial telephone users.
Right, this is for city fire and,
This is for 911.
correct. Okay.
Is there a but there?
Not yet.
I mean, it's a pole, it's a pole, or
It's a pole, it's a pole in an R4 or an R3, so do we camouflage it the way we made the, and I wasn't here for that decision, but I agreed with that decision that an ugly tower should be camouflaged so it is not necessarily an ugly tower. Although a big white thing wasn't exactly what I had in mind.
Certainly, that was in the middle of a well-developed already residential area. What is the building just to the north of this site? I saw it in the
There
R4.
is a church.
It's a church.
There is a church to the east, to the north and east. That so it
Could
kind
you
of
show the
surrounds.
slide up again?
Absolutely. Right.
Right there. That's up there.
So this right here is
Yeah.
a church.
That's the church.
So they've got a large parking lot around. There is, when well 10 went into this location, there is a 10-foot landscape buffer that was placed as well,
Okay.
surrounding it on the north and east side of that to buffer from the church.
So we got, if I remember, that's Walmart, right?
Correct.
MB, and then over there is
Staples?
There's the
no,
trampoline
Staples is
park.
down that way. This is
No, it's the trampoline park.
Yep, trampoline park. And then
Yeah.
you've got the,
Goodwill.
Goodwill and the hotel.
And you have Moscow Family Medicine up on the,
Yep.
So the
up
closest
here.
The closest residential homes, I realize how it's zoned, but home development, residential developments would be quite a ways to the east, I think. And this one is right up against the state line, right in the corner of the. Okay, I think
We have a drawing of the proposed monopole. Are there any photos of it? I'm just curious.
I don't know. Tom Pickerel is here from the information system. He may be able to address how far into design they are. I'm not sure how far into the design phase there are, but he may have some more additional information regarding that.
It's going to be going behind the current water pump house.
If approved, yes.
Yeah.
any questions for the staff. Okay, thanks, Amy.
Sure.
For now. We'd like to hear from the applicant, please, if he or she's available.
Okay, good evening. My name's Tom Picarella, IS manager for the city. And I am also the project manager for the radio infrastructure upgrade that we're doing. So just a little background on our current radio infrastructure. The city's current emergency radio system has significant deficiencies, and much of the equipment is reaching or past the end of the serviceable life. We're looking at a lot of our repeaters are 25 years old. There's almost to the point where we can't even replace them anymore. So we are moving forward to try to design and get new equipment and make sure that our radio system is upgraded. The first responders currently experience 5 to 10% transmittal failure due to dead zones throughout the patrol area, resulting in delayed notification and delayed officer response, both of which have escalated risk to citizens, first responders, and property. With only one radio channel for police use, officers cannot communicate without talking over and interfering with other officers during University of Idaho sporting games, signature community events, and life-threatening emergencies. Currently, first responders must hunt for channels to locate appropriate repeater to transmit calls. This avoidable action places first responders at risk for injury or death due to lack of radio communication. Overall, the ability to quickly intervene has declined as communication systems has deteriorated and calls for service have increased. In addition, the lack of an encrypted radio system results in criminal access to real-time police enforcement actions, creating officer safety issue. In 2021, the city commissioned the needs assessment study to evaluate our existing radio system and provided recommendations regarding the steps necessary to correct the current system deficiencies. The city council has identified the update to the emergency communication system as one of the highest priority needs for the city and has budgeted the funding for the project. The proposed system, emergency communication system, is a 5-channel simulcast system with primary repeaters located on Moscow Mountain, Paradise Ridge, and the proposed antenna tower at the current Well 10 site. It will also include voting receivers at Rotary Park, Vista Water Tank, and the Resident Street Water Tank. The proposed system will allow 5 channels, each of which will have citywide coverage, eliminating the need to switch channels based on the location. And just to make that clear, that the current radios, our officers have to actually manually switch it when they're driving down the road to get the better communication. So this actually, the voter receivers allow them to not even touch it. They can just keep driving it. It'll pick whichever tower is they're closest to. And the proposed system will also have backup microwave links to provide a triple redundant connection to emergency dispatch. So as Amy said before, that's the subject site there. And this is the same drawing with the proposed monopole right in here. And then this is the same drawing that you guys have in your packets. Just to go into a little bit more detail, there's not very much on this at all. We have the 2 whip antennas. We have one here and one here. And then we have 2 little dishes on the top. And that is all the intended use at this time. And this is all just radio, 911 radio communication. This is another drawing just as a comparison to the building. Nothing more on there.
I'm sorry, back up, please. What's
Sure.
the top, what's the top of the building height?
Top of the building height. Where's that at? Kind of hard to read. I'm not sure.
Okay,
It's a 1-story building, so I would say it'd be 15 feet or less. You're talking about the well house?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say 15 feet or less. It's a 1-story building.
is it right up against the building? Because that doesn't look as tall as I would expect when you put the building in front of it.
Yeah, so this part right in
Okay, I get
this
it.
area, this is like concrete here, and this is right on the edge. And one of the reasons that we're putting it back in this corner is because the water department has other ideas in the future for this area. So we pulled it over here. We also conducted a geotech study, which does soil samples to make sure that it can handle the 85-foot tower, and that was approved. So the relevant criteria and standards, this is kind of a lot of what Amy already went through. So the proposed use is a conditionally permitted use within the zoning district per Moscow City Code 4-3-4. The proposed antenna tower will be located on the property that currently contains an industrial public works facility in an area of commercial uses and agricultural fields. And the proposed use will not generate any nuance that would be injurious or detrimental to the adjacent properties. No additional lights. And when I say lights, there's no like beacons or anything on top of that. That will be added at all. Associated equipment will be installed within the existing well house. So all the radio equipment that is going to be of use for the antennas and whips that are in there will be inside the well house. And I think I actually included that in the packet as well. It was a little bit of an overkill inside, but that's all the equipment that will be in there. And then the proposed antenna tower will not require any public utility services, will not generate any additional traffic upon adjacent streets, and will enhance and improve the emergency communication and response service to the surrounding area. And the proposed will not endanger the public health or safety and will provide enhanced emergency radio coverage for the community and the surrounding area for police and fire emergency responders. And the proposed use will meet and comply with all the applicable zoning standards. And the proposed use will be in conformance with the comprehensive plan and will enhance the support of emergency services, objectives, and actions contained within the plan, including general goals. So to provide for the orderly and efficient delivery and location of public facilities, utilities, and services to the residents and businesses within the community. And the emergency service objective, which is the plan to provide the efficient and effective delivery of emergency police and fire protection and emergency medical services to the community today and in the future. And also the implementation actions, which is to locate, plan, and maintain emergency service facilities and resources necessary to meet the needs of the current and future residents of the community. And with that, if you guys have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
I have one question, and you said it wouldn't require any utilities. Is there any power source to this pole?
So that is all going back down into the well 10 building within there, and is no additional power that's going to be contained. Plus there's also the backup generator that's off on the side that if for whatever reason the power went out, the backup generator kicks on, but no other types of power.
Okay, so you have a generator, and is that generator needed to be tested from time to time?
It is tested on a maintenance schedule. I'm not sure what that maintenance schedule is. I'd have to ask the water department, but I do know they tested it through a schedule.
Okay. Now that was, the noise of the generator seemed to be a huge issue for the other tower we were dealing with. And we don't have any close neighbors that I could see as an issue here, but I might hear of some. But at any rate, that generator seemed to be a significant issue. And so I just wondering where that was going to be placed.
Well, the generator's already there.
Okay.
Yeah, it's already off to the side. I know you had a picture of that actual generator.
Yeah, the generator was placed in association with the well house. So it's been there since the well house has been in operation.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Other questions for the applicant? Thank you very much. Certainly made a pretty good case for as to why we need it. Okay, you open a public hearing for anyone who would like to speak in support of this applicant project. Okay, is there anybody who would like to speak in opposition to this project? Okay, the public hearing is closed and we will discuss it here amongst the board about the 85-foot tower. I guess, yes, I was here for the last discussion for all 3 times it came to the board, as a matter of fact. And I think we finally worked our way to find something that was unacceptable in the middle of a residential area. Certainly the landlord didn't care. It was a church, by the way, but a very well-developed residential area, and we heard pros and cons, but mostly cons, and I understand why. And it's true. We finally found a design that was probably palatable, and I drive by it all the time. And anyhow, this I see a little bit different. It's not in a developed residential area. It's probably in the most far away place that it's still on the state of Idaho and in the city of Moscow, in a utilities area. The closest concern might be the church, but one is a precedent. The last church didn't mind. I don't know if this church minds. They're not here to talk about it. So, I mean, I certainly see the need, and I don't know, trying to find a better place if there's, and make it more expensive doesn't seem to be appealing to me. So I support the project as I sit here and listen to it, but want to hear other people's comments if you have them.
I'm completely in favor of it. I think it's a great idea. I just wanted to bring up the fact that we're talking about monopoles. And I don't really care who's putting the monopole up, whether it's the city, you're still in an R4 zone. At some point, the Mormon Church may go away, and that could become a resident apartment complex or any other of the conditional uses. I don't see it happening, but it could be repurposed for something R4. And I'm just throwing it out. We did it on one, and maybe it should be something that should be done on all of them, but it's not, and it's part of a conditional use. So throwing it out, consideration.
No,
If you
I-
don't want to consider it, that's fine. But it's not going to break my decision on this one. I'm going to vote for it regardless. But I just want us to think about, if the Mormon Church were to come at us for a commercial monopole for the same kind of thing, what would we do?
Well, again, one of the big issues that we had to deliberate over was the generator, the noise of the generator. How many times they're going to have to turn that on and had to stay on for an hour and twice a week. And so it was, wind, and they didn't like the fact that it was going to be such a large monopole anyway in the neighborhood. We don't have that issue here. We don't have any neighbors right now that are going to be worrying about the generator. But that generator was very significant as far as our deliberation and refusing and denying the pole to be placed there. So, but this, again, like Tim says, it's about as far away from the residential areas as we can get in Moscow right now. We're in a state line, and it's necessary. And I think if the Mormon Church was to eventually go away and be a residential, it would already been there. It'd already be there. And so people would,
Live with it.
they would say, oh, yeah, it's probably a good thing to have it because we can get good service here for our fire department and our ambulance crew. So I don't think that it's at that point, it's going to be the issue that the other one was. I just don't believe it will be. So.
This brings back lots of comments were made last time, and anybody would say a utility pole is ugly. Well, we've grown up with them, so we don't see them anymore, and these things are becoming more prevalent. And I got to tell you, the ones dressed up like a pine tree is the ugliest things I've ever seen. I don't know if you've seen any of those things. But,
Seen them dressed as palm trees,
palm trees,
which would go really well with
yeah,
the
that's here in northern Idaho. So, other comments? Or do I hear a motion?
I will move that we approve the conditional use permit and direct staff to develop the relevant standards and criterias without any conditions. Thank you.
Seconded?
I'll second that.
Been moved and seconded to approve the application without conditions and to direct the staff to prepare relevant conditions and standards. We'll go this way. Jerry?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
Aye. It's been moved and approved. Okay, good. I look forward to Better connectivity and communications with the police and fire department. That's all good. Let's see. Any reports from the staff?
No, just an upcoming meeting for the RCS on July 5th.
There's a lot of, Jennifer's put out queries on upcoming meetings. So have you got all your inputs by now, Jennifer? Still waiting, okay.
The next hearing after that is the following week, Thursday,
Right.
July 13th.
So for the benefit of the public, what this means is we meet again and then go over what the staff did as far as the preparing the, all of the projects that were presented to us today, their criteria, and then we approve that. And we review the minutes of today's meeting. So we've debriefed that. The next meeting is at 5:30 on July 5th. And I have no announcement. Any other announcements? So is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn?
I second. It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. I think we can all say aye.
Thank you for being a chairman.